Before Mario jumped, before Link explored, and long before Joy-Con started flying across living rooms, Nintendo was making playing cards. Yeah, cards. Welcome to the epic, weird, and wonderful journey of Nintendo's gaming evolution, from humble paper to high-def hybrids. This is the history of Nintendo. Let's rewind way back. It's 1889. Nintendo starts off in Kyoto, Japan, making handmade Hanafuda playing cards, a traditional Japanese game that feels like poker if you give it a kimono and way cooler artwork. The cards were beautifully designed, but back then, Nintendo wasn't aiming for world domination. They were just trying to make a living with an honest game of chance. Fast forward to the 1950s, and things get a little strange. Weird, some may say. Nintendo tried running a taxi company, selling instant rice, and even dabbled in love hotels. Yep, really. Call it the ultimate side quest phase. Was it successful? Let's just say those ventures didn't get past level 1. In the 1960s, things start to click. Nintendo shifts focus to toys, and here's where we meet Gunpei Yokoi, a name every gamer should know. Gunpei wasn't even part of the creative team. He was working in maintenance, literally just a technician fixing machines. But he had something special, a childhood spent tinkering. Growing up, Gunpei used scraps and spare parts to build toys that could amuse him, a habit born from necessity and curiosity. That spirit never left him. One day, while working at Nintendo, he was spotted playing around with one of his handmade contraptions, a plastic arm that could extend and grab things. Instead of getting in trouble, his boss said, "Hey man, that's fire." That toy became the Ultra Hand, which went on to sell over 1 million units. Suddenly, the janitor was now a legend in the making. This wasn't just a toy, it was the first step in a revolution. Gunpei's lateral thinking with withered technology, using cheap, available tech in creative ways, became a blueprint for Nintendo's future.
Entering the 70s, Gunpei Yokoi strikes again with the Game & Watch, a handheld LCD game with a clock. Millions are sold. The people are hooked. Meanwhile, in the arcades, Nintendo is cooking up something special. In 1981, Shigeru Miyamoto was tasked with turning a struggling arcade cabinet called Radar Scope into something playable. What he made instead was Donkey Kong. It introduces a pixelated carpenter named Jumpman, the Jumpman, your average mustachioed plumber who jumps on turtles, eats mushrooms from strangers, and saves a princess who clearly needs better security. He's short, brave, Italian, and somehow a race car driver, doctor, golfer, and Olympic athlete all in one. Damn, wish I could be like Mario. Back to business, the game was a hit, and Nintendo, they're finally on the map. Nintendo's first home console was the Color TV game, released in 1977 in Japan. These were simple machines that played built-in games like Pong. They weren't flashy, but sold 3 million units. Not bad for a warm-up, I'd say. The Color TV game series spanned 5 models and even featured early work by Miyamoto on the exterior design. It also marked Nintendo's first real brush with consumer electronics, and their first time co-developing hardware with Mitsubishi, a car company. They weren't just making toys anymore. Enter the big leagues. 1983, Japan gets the Famicom. 2 years later, the NES hits the US. It came with Super Mario Bros. And suddenly, everyone's jumping on so-called Goombas. With hits like Zelda and Metroid, Nintendo shaped the industry. More importantly, the NES revived the gaming industry after the infamous 1983 video game crash. Confidence was at an all-time low, then Nintendo rolled in, zapper in hand, and shot new life into the medium. Famicom's toy-like red and white design was intentional, to appeal to Japanese families and to distinguish it from the failed consoles that came before it. In the US, it was redesigned to look more like a VCR, something tech-savvy but not threatening. In 1989, say hello to the Game Boy. It's chunky, it's green-tinted, and it eats 4 AA batteries for breakfast. But who cares about the looks? The personality matters most, right? The Game Boy was brilliant. It had Tetris and later Pokemon, games that basically printed money. Nintendo proved you could take gaming anywhere, just maybe bring some spare batteries. 1990 in Japan, 1991 in the US, the Super Nintendo lands. It brings 16-bit glory, Mode 7 graphics, and a sound chip that slapped. Nintendo doubled down on creativity with A Link to the Past, Chrono Trigger, and Super Metroid. They were no longer just making games. They were crafting epic, playable stories. The SNES was where childhoods were forged and controllers learned flying. Ah yes, the infamous Virtual Boy, Nintendo's bold 3D experience in 1995. With its red and black display, tabletop stand, and immobile gameplay, the Virtual Boy was uncomfortable, awkward, and pretty much a flop. It sold under 1 million units and was discontinued within a year. It was like looking into the Matrix, but only if the Matrix sucked. Still, it was bold, it had potential, and it showed that Nintendo, even at their weirdest, wasn't afraid to spectacularly fail in the name of innovation. In 1996, Nintendo 64 drops. It's, you guessed it, 64-bit. It is 3D, and it introduces the analog stick. Super Mario 64 set a new standard for 3D platformers. To this day, it still stands as one of the greatest speedrunning hits of all time. Zelda: Ocarina of Time became one of the most critically acclaimed games ever, and GoldenEye 007 Let's just say it ruined many friendships with proximity mines. And the hardware, the N64 stuck with cartridges, which limited storage space but offered lightning fast load times. Nintendo chose speed over volume, a gamble that paid off in first-party quality but cost them most third-party support. 2001, Nintendo drops the Game Boy Advance, now with color shoulder buttons and a painfully dim screen. Still, it was a hit. Hit games like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, Metroid Fusion, and Advance Wars kept fans glued for hours, especially under a lamp, because of the dim screen. Later in 2001, the GameCube pops up. It had a lunchbox design, tiny discs, and some of Nintendo's most underrated gems: Smash Melee, Metroid Prime, and Zelda the Wind Waker, all pure gold, and Super Smash Bros. Melee, which still dominates competitive fighting game tournaments to this day. The Wave Bird wireless controller was ahead of its time, and the GBA to GameCube link cable opened the door to cool cross-play ideas. Sadly, despite all his classic status, the GameCube never caught up to Sony's PS2. The Nintendo DS arrives in 2004 with one screen on top and a touchscreen on the bottom. Nintendo's gone rogue again, yet it works. In fact, it explodes. Games like Nintendogs, Mario Kart DS, Brain Age, and New Super Mario Bros. Make it the best-selling handheld of all time. Even non-gamers join the party. With online multiplayer, microphone integration, and backwards compatibility, the DS wasn't just a new system, it was a new direction. 2006, the Wii was introduced. Motion control, Mii avatars, and Wii Sports, the game that turned your living room into a bowling alley. Hold tight to the remote, or else your TV screen might turn rainbow-colored. The Wii emphasized movement, accessibility, and fun over horsepower. It became a phenomenon, selling over 100 million units. The Wii wasn't just a console, it was a global fitness trend. Sort of. Yeah, you could say that, I think. Next up, the 3DS in 2011. Glasses-free 3D, very cool, until your eyes said nope after 30 minutes. It also included a built-in gyroscope and nostalgia-fueled remakes. Great games like Pokemon X and Y, Fire Emblem Awakening, and the cute kawaii Animal Crossing made it a hit, and it had Street Pass. Remember strangers walking around with glowing green lights in their pockets? 2012. The Wii U, a console so misunderstood people thought it was an accessory. Still, it gave us Mario Kart 8, Splatoon, and Super Mario 3D World. The Wii U's ideas laid the groundwork for something revolutionary. You could say they switched things up a bit. Boom, 2017. The Nintendo Switch drops with red light, blue light controllers. A hybrid console you can play docked or handheld, yes please, with bangers like Breath of the Wild, Odyssey, and Animal Crossing. The Switch became a cultural phenomenon, basically kept the world sane in 2020. The Switch soared past 150 million units, becoming one of the best-selling consoles of all time, and it proved that Nintendo's most powerful hardware is still its imagination. And yes, people still lose their Joy-Cons. Last but not least, and coming in hot, the Switch 2. Launching in 2025, better visuals, more power, magnetic Joy-Cons, built-in mic, and a 4K docked mode, backwards compatibility with the older Switch games, and packed with new hits like Mario Kart World and the Dusk Bloods. The new title's expanded online features point to a bolder, even more social Nintendo, and maybe, just maybe, fewer Joy-Con drift complaints. From playing cards to literal console kings, Nintendo's legacy is a mix of bold moves, lovable characters, just the right amount of chaos, and probably a little too much legal action. One thing's for sure, the game isn't over. It's just loading the next level, and Nintendo's future, still weird, still wonderful, still Nintendo. Thanks for watching.